Hey folks, this is another video in a series that aspires to teach Google Apps Script fundamentals to beginners. In previous lessons, we've learned how to use our console log, how to organize our files directory, how to use the plus symbol for concatenation and math operations. We've explored dates and times, arrays, and for loops. We're going to resume by navigating to the Files module, where we'll be adding a new script file. Our focus is going to be on if statements, so we are going to title this f underscore if. We're going to hit enter, and we will change the name of our function to be if capital E explore. We'll save our function, select line 2, hit enter once, 2 slashes for a comment, where we will create a 2-dimensional array. And hit enter and tab. So we're going to declare a variable called array2d, and we'll set it equal to square brackets, and we'll hit enter. So we are going to be adding arrays to this 2-dimensional array. We're going to add square brackets, and we will have a string, and we will say mat, and we will use a comma, and then do single quotes, and then do mat at mat.com, and then we'll go to the right, and we will add an amount. We'll go to the right of our array, we'll add a comma, and we'll hit enter. We will create another array where we will enter in mark, comma, mark at gmail.com, comma, and then some amount. We'll add another array, so we'll add a comma at the end of our second array. We'll hit enter, square brackets, single quote, Hallie, comma, single quote, Hallie at gmail.com, comma, and then we'll do an amount, so we'll do 7. We're going to go to the right of our array, add a comma, and we will do one final array, a square bracket, and we'll set that equal to Christy, comma, single quote, Christy at hotmail.com, and we'll add a comma, and we'll do an amount of 20. We'll hit the down arrow on our keyboard, we'll hit enter twice, hit the left arrow twice, 2 slashes for a comment, and now I'm going to outline some if operators. I'm going to hit enter and tab. You can enter this if you want to. We're not going to be using any of this, but I just kind of want a place to talk about the types of things that we're going to be looking to use our if statement for. So basically, we are going to set conditionals, and we are going to loop through our array, and we are going to set statements that will either include or exclude values from our 2-dimensional array. So the first, and I'm not going to use var with these because we don't need them for anything, but I want to just kind of have it written on screen so you can look at it. So the first thing that we might want to use is when something equals something. The thing in the single quotes is going to be the operator that you will use in your if statement. So if you want something to equal something in an if, so if you say like if this thing equals that, then do this thing, you need to use 2 equal signs. And the reason for that is because of when we're declaring variables, if you use single equal sign, you are declaring something as. Whereas if you are using 2 equal signs, then you are evaluating it. So that's the big difference between the two, where if you do if something equals something with 1 equal sign, then you're effectively declaring it to be represented by that thing. Whereas if you use 2 equal signs, then you are evaluating to see if it is the same as. So I'm going to go to the right here, and I'm going to add a comment, and I'm going to say this means equal to exactly and or single quote does. So it does this thing, or it is this thing, or it whatever. I'm going to hit enter. The next thing is does not equal. And the way that you represent that is by an exclamation point and an equal sign. So if you want to say this is not or this does not, then you will use exclamation point and equal sign. So this means not equal to and or does not. I'm going to hit enter. The next thing is contains or like. So this is a regular expression or a more abstract way. So you can use dot includes in order to say this thing is like this or this contains this. So it is a regular expression to include similar but not equal things. I don't know if that's the best way to explain it, but that's kind of how my mind interprets it. You also have another way of saying does not, and that is by using a tilde. So you can add this to the beginning of something, and you can say like does not. Once this tilde is there, it's almost the same thing as the exclamation point equal sign, but there are some instances where the tilde is the appropriate syntax. So I'm just going to add that comment there. Another way of saying does not. So you can also have multiple conditions. So you can use an ampersand. So this represents and. So you can say something is equal to and something does not equal, or something is equal to or it contains, or something like that, where you can have multiple conditions in order to evaluate your data. And the last thing that we're going to be playing around with today is or conditions. So you'll use a vertical bar in order to say something is something or something else. So I'm going to do my best to explore most of these operators to give you a sense of how you can create conditions for your data. So the premise here is going to be using a for loop. So we're going to be building on our previous lesson, and we are going to loop through this two-dimensional array, and we are going to use conditions through if in order to include and exclude data. So this is a very common way that you will be processing information as you build out applications and scripts and all that type of stuff. So I'm going to go to the right of line 17. I'm going to hit enter twice, left arrow on my keyboard twice, 2 slashes for a comment, and we will start by looping through our 2D array. I'm going to hit enter and tab, and we're going to do for, and then our variable will be I in array 2D. And hit the right arrow on our keyboard, and we'll hit space. We're going to have opening curly brackets, and we will hit enter once, where we will log the position of the array. Or no, you know what? We'll log the value of I. We'll hit enter and tab, and we'll do logger.log, open parentheses, and we'll say single quotes, the value of I is, have a colon there, we'll hit space, we'll hit the right arrow on our keyboard, we'll hit space, we'll use a plus symbol, and we'll hit space, and then we will pass in I. We'll hit the right arrow on our keyboard, and we will add a semicolon. We'll hit enter twice, and we will hit the left arrow on our keyboard twice, 2 slashes for a comment, and now we will log out each element of, we'll log out the first dimension of the array. So we'll hit enter and tab, and we'll do logger.log, open parentheses, and we'll do array 2D, square bracket I. We'll hit the right arrow on our keyboard twice, and we will add a semicolon. We will now run our code, and you'll see that we are logging the value of I, and then we are using I with array 2D in order to access each array within our two-dimensional array. So the output in our console represents the first dimension of our two-dimensional array. We are adding one to the value of I each time our loop runs, which is resulting in us looping through each array within our two-dimensional array. So what we're going to do now is go on line 25 and hit enter twice, 2 slashes for a comment, and we will have an all caps if statement where we will create a conditional to evaluate an element in each array. We're going to hit enter, tab, and the way that you use an if is the same way as a for loop. So you'll do if, open parentheses, and then you will reference something. So in this case, we're going to use array 2D, square bracket I. And then we're going to pick one of our elements. So in this case, we are going to use element number 2, and we are going to look to see if it includes an at symbol. Now, you know what we'll do? We'll look at element number 1. So we'll do array 2D square bracket I, and then we're going to use another set of square brackets so that we can access our first element. And we'll say if array 2D square bracket I, which is accessing the first dimension, and then square bracket 0, which is referencing the first element in each array, double equal sign, single quote, mat. We're going to go to the right, we're going to hit space, and we're going to add curly brackets. We're going to hit enter. And now we will log out if the condition was met. We'll hit enter and tab, and we'll do logger.log, and we will use single quotes and say the condition of the if was met. We'll hit the right arrow on our keyboard twice, and we will add a semicolon, and we will hit run. So now you can see that we looped through each array in our two-dimensional array, and then we evaluated using our if statement if the first element in the each of the arrays was equal to mat. So we used 2 equal signs to evaluate the first element of each array. And when the condition was met, we had some logging here that said the condition of the if was met. And you'll notice that that does not appear for any of the other arrays. Therefore, they are not moving onto the next portion of the conditional. So using if is a way for you to include or exclude things. So additionally, what we could do here is instead of saying is equal to mat, we could say does not equal mat. So we can exclude all arrays that have mat as the first condition. So when we hit run, you can see that we are now getting the value of I is 0. So we are in our first iteration here. We are extracting the array with mat, and then we did not meet our conditions. So we move on to the next step of the program, which is iterating using the for loop to add 1 to the value of I. And then we are accessing our array at array number 1, which is our second array. And we evaluated the first element. And because it is not met, we have the condition of the if was met. Same thing happened the next time, same thing happened the next time. So you have the ability to include things using double equal sign, or you have the ability to exclude things using the exclamation point equal sign, which means does not. So what we're going to do now is we are going to add, we're going to change our conditions here a little bit, and we're going to remove the does not and the mat, and we're just going to have if array 2D square bracket I square bracket, instead of 0, we're going to do 1. So now we're going to be referencing the second element of each array. So these are email addresses. So we're going to say if the second element of each array dot includes, and then we'll have open parentheses. So we're going to use the @ symbol because all the email addresses have an @ symbol. So when we say if the second element of the array includes an @ symbol, then the condition is met. So we're going to hit run. And now you can see that all of the arrays met the condition. So we are getting the condition of the if was met. So what we're going to do now is we are going to add in an additional condition. So we're going to say if the second element of each array contains an et symbol, then we're going to use the and operator so that we can have multiple conditions in here. And then we are going to use the tilde, and we'll have parentheses there, and we will say array 2D dot, or sorry, square bracket I, square bracket 1 dot includes, open parentheses, Gmail. Oh, sorry, we need to have that in strings. So if the second element of each array does not include Gmail, then the condition will be met. So what's happening here is our first condition is saying if the second element of each array includes an et symbol, which means that it's an email address, and the second element does not include, because we have this tilde here and we're using the includes operator Gmail, then we want to log out the condition of the if was met. So we're going to hit run. And now you can see that we are getting the condition was met for matt@matt.com and the condition of the if was met for christy@hotmail.com. But because Hallie and Mark both have Gmail addresses, they have not met the condition of the if and thus have no output in here. So what's happening here is we are using that tilde with parentheses and the includes method in order to say does not include Gmail. So this is one example of where you would use the tilde instead of the exclamation equal sign in order to exclude something that has a regular expression. In this case is using the includes method. Now the benefit of if is that you have a few tiers that you can use. So in addition to declaring multiple condition statements, sorry that had a typo there, you can also include an else if statement in order to define something else. So we're going to resume on line 31. We're going to hit enter twice. We're going to add 2 slashes for a comment, and we are going to have an else if statement, which is a conditional to evaluate a secondary condition. We're going to hit enter and tab, and the syntax for else if is the same as that. So you just type else if, and then you can have open parentheses, and you can declare a secondary condition. So if the condition, the primary condition that we have is something has to have an ampersand and it can't include Gmail, we can use else if to evaluate another aspect of our condition in here. So we will say else if array 2D square bracket I. And then we're going to use the third element of each array, which is an amount. So we'll say else if array 2D square bracket I, and I apologize because I have an extra square bracket in there, I2, so now we're referencing the third element of each array, is less than or equal to 10. We're going to hit the right arrow on our keyboard, and we will add curly brackets, and we'll hit enter, and then we will log out the secondary condition. We'll hit enter and tab, and we'll do logger.log, open parentheses, single quote, and we'll say the secondary condition was met. We'll have hit the right arrow on your keyboard twice and to add a semicolon. And now we're going to run our code. And you can see that the conditions that we currently have for our primary condition is that the email element, our second element, needs to include an @ symbol, and it cannot have Gmail. So our first array of matt@matt.com has the condition of the if was met. So those are our primary conditions. Our second array is mark@gmail.com. He does not meet our primary condition. Additionally, we have a secondary condition that says else if the amount, the third element of the array, is less than or equal to 10, then that will trigger the secondary condition to be met. Mark has a Gmail account and his amount is greater than 10, so he does not meet our primary condition, which is the if, or the secondary condition, which is having less than 10 as your amount. When we get to our third array, Hallie has a Gmail account, so she does not meet the primary condition of our if. However, the amount, the third element of the array, is less than or equal to 10 because she has an amount of 7. That's resulting in her meeting the secondary condition, and thus the logging is saying that the secondary condition, in this case our else if statement, is being met, and thus she is getting that output. Finally, Christy has an email address that is not Gmail and has an @ symbol, so she meets the primary condition and is thus logging out the output from our if statement. So the final aspect of if is that if your primary condition is not met and it doesn't meet an else if statement, then we're going to resume on line 37. You can hit enter twice, 2 slashes for a comment. You can use an else statement. And that means that you can just provide something for items that do not meet defined criteria. So else just allows you to just generally throw out a statement. So there is no parentheses here. You're not defining anything. You're not declaring anything. You just write else, curly brackets, enter, and then logging. And you can do logger.log, open parentheses, single quote, else condition, because line item does not meet any defined values. Cool. So let's review this before we run it again. Starting from the top, we have a 2-dimensional array that has 4 arrays within it, each having 3 elements. The first element is a name, the second element is an email, the third element is an amount. We are using a for loop in order to iterate through each array in our 2-dimensional array. We have then constructed a nested set of logic using if, else if, and else. Our if statement is our primary condition. If the second element of an array has an @ symbol and that second element does not have a Gmail address, then the line item will meet the condition of our primary if statement. We developed a secondary set of conditions within an else if statement, where we are evaluating the amount in the third element of each array. If that amount is less than or equal to 10, then the secondary condition will be met. And my apologies because I got a little typo there that I'm going to clean up. Finally, if the line item does not include an @ symbol and it has a Gmail address and it has a value that is greater than 10, then it will return a generic else statement that just say none of the conditions were met and it doesn't meet any defined variables or values. So we're going to hit run, and you'll see that we log through all 4 elements of our 2-dimensional array. The first array has an @ symbol, and it does not have a Gmail account, so the condition of the if was met. We move on to the second array. It has a Gmail account, so it does not meet our primary condition. Its third element has a value that is greater than 10, thus it does not meet our primary or secondary conditions, and our else statement is returned because this array does not meet any of our defined values. Our third array has a Gmail address, so it does not meet the primary condition of our if. However, its amount is less than or equal to 10 because it is 7. Therefore, it meets our secondary condition, which returns the output from our else if statement. Finally, our last array has an email account that is not Gmail, and thus it meets the criteria of our primary conditions and it returns the logging from our if statement. Learning how to use arrays, two-dimensional arrays, loops, and if are the primary building blocks necessary for learning how to program and to script. At first, they might be complicated, but I would encourage you to spend time to engage with them. Because once you understand how to tune your loops and your if statements, you will start to open up a whole new avenue of exploration as you look to develop within the AppScript environment. I hope you found this video helpful. If you'd like to continue following this series, there's a playlist linked in the description.